Hello there. Today we're looking at how much money I made in my first 2 years of working solo as a Salesforce solopreneur and a Salesforce expert. My name is Vuk Stajc. If you want to connect with me, you can do so right here. And let's jump in. The main idea that I want to convey today is not how cool it is that I made money solo, but how exactly I made that money solo. Because it's not about how much you make, it's about how you make that money that determines if you're going to be successful long-term as a solopreneur. And what do I mean by this word solopreneur? Well, the first thing is we're not freelancers. When you're a solopreneur, you are going directly and dealing directly with clients, ideally with multiple clients, and you're not just selling your full-time to one company or to one subcontractor. You're designing a clear client journey that addresses the needs of a clear client that you know and love, and you understand their industry, and that you can bring real value to, and that you go and you connect with those people, and you work directly with them. And you're going to see, as we talk about the timeline of how I made my money in the first 2 years, that that's exactly what I did. Now, because I've been working solo for almost 6 years, we have to look back 6 years ago in September of 2020 when I officially started Maverick, but I didn't immediately start working with it. I still had a full-time job whenever I founded it. And I had actually started strategizing about it even a year before the time that I officially founded it. But I actually started working solo in April of 2021. So you need to put yourself in the context of those times. Obviously, there were different times in the ecosystem of Salesforce where I worked. There were different times in the economy where things were going more digital, not more digital, but certainly more remote because it was peak COVID. But even though there was uncertainty and level of uncertainty, I still took the jump and took the leap because I was confident in myself and I was confident that I had budgeted enough money to give myself a decent runway, which is the same thing you need to think about before you even start thinking about working solo. But in April of 2021, I quit my job because I had a client that verbally agreed to do work with me. And guess what? The moment that I quit my job, they ghosted me and they never got back in touch with me. So I quit my job, did not actually have an initial client like I thought I would, but I didn't despair. You can see I didn't make any money in the first month of April, but that's okay. I started going to the clients that I had previously worked with, to contacts that I previously had, and I reached out to them and said, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. This is how I think that I can bring value to companies like yours. And I didn't try to sell to them. I wanted their feedback to help improve how I would take my ideas and my strategies and my solutions to market. But thankfully, by talking to many of my previous clients, one of the companies there actually did reach out and say, hey, Vuk, we would love to bring you in. And that's who became my first client. So my first client was my previous client from a few years back that I no longer had a conflict of interest from previous company, and I was able to jump in and provide assistance to their team. Thankfully, even 5+ years later, they're still my client to this day, but they were my first client. Now, just because in May they paid me a deposit doesn't mean that all the work that we wanted to do was done in June. So even though they were my first client, in June I actually didn't generate any revenue because the work that I was doing for them was only paid in July. But during that time, I started to reach out and work with lots and lots of people who were putting their hand up in various different places around the internet and saying, hey, I'm stuck with this, I'm stuck with that problem. And I just helped them. I wanted to connect with them, to just give them assistance. By the time August came around, the work that I was putting in to connect with lots of people had started to pay off. Because people that I had helped, people that I connected with, that put their hands up on the internet that said, hey, I need some help, 2 of them came around and said, hey, Vuk, we want to work with you. So I was able to get 2 more deposits secured, and I finished the first deliverables of my initial client, so I'd also invoiced them the second half. And then they stayed around and they wanted to continue with monthly engagements, so we weren't just working on a single project. They'd signed me on for a monthly retainer. And by the time October started rolling around, it was easier to bring new clients. But what you're seeing is I wasn't working with 1 client at a time or 2 clients at a time. By November, I'd already had 5 clients. And I was starting to feel very confident that I was going to be able to succeed, right? So my 6-month runway that I gave myself stopped being a worry by month 2 or 3 because I had secured enough clients and I wasn't dealing with just one. I didn't have just a single point of failure. I didn't have just one contract, right? I had direct relationships with 5 clients by the time November came around. And the majority of them came from me connecting with people and just helping them. Now, I didn't offer to do them hours and hours of free labor, but I was happy to talk to them for half an hour and solve some problem with them and build those relationships because, as you can see, they resulted in revenue for me. As 2022 rolled around, you can see I started having some of my most profitable months because I was building momentum. By now, I was actually having some word of mouth, and some of my first initial clients had recommended 1 or 2 people to come and speak to me and reach out to me. So in January of 2022, I had a phenomenal month. Right? And as you can see, by April, I already had 7 different clients that I was working with. Now, not every month were every one of them paying me, because I didn't work in that way, right? I said, hey, you pay me up front for some work, we'll do it, at the end you pay. Some people stuck around in monthly retainers, some people did not need work all the time. But because I had multiple clients, by the time August of 2022 rolled around and I was a little bit more than a year into it, I realized that, hey, I am actually changing my life here. I'm no longer grounded to just staying in Canada where I was no longer happy. So already in 2022, I started my planning to leave Canada and make my life in a more warm place and not have to shovel snow. So I was immediately starting to plan my Portugal journey. And what that meant was by the summer of 2022, I was ready to sell my home. So I sold my home. Knowing that that was going to close at the end of 2022 meant that I was able to solidly start planning my transition to Portugal. And in 2023, that's exactly what I did. I jumped and I flew to Portugal. And what do you see there? There were a few months where I didn't have any billing done because I had the flexibility to tell those clients who were there, hey, I'm going to be changing my life significantly. You're going to have to wait for me. I'm not going to be available. So in December, I didn't bill anybody. In January, things only started to pick back up again whenever I started to re-engage and I got settled in Portugal. But in February, March, April, you see that I was immediately back to some of the strongest months that I had. And I even added new clients because I was in a happier mental space. I was more ready to put more energy into the business, and the business was giving me amazing opportunity in my life to make something that is much more than just money is worth, which is the ability to live happier, the ability to live in a more flexible manner, more true to myself. So all of this was only possible because I had multiple clients and I had direct relationships with those clients. So it didn't matter that how much they were paying me. Obviously, if I had one client paying me $1 million, okay, good job. If you can get that, phenomenal. The reality was that I was able to replace my 6-figure salary and even beat it in both of the first 2 years of working solo. But more than just beating the salary, I beat the ability and the life quality that I was used to, and my life transformed rapidly because I had direct relationships with multiple clients and I had the ability to build more of those relationships. And that's exactly what I've gone on to do since these first 2 years. And the reality is this type of journey is something you can replicate. Nothing that I did was magical, right? I worked in an industry, in an area that I knew and I was experienced with. I brought energy and passion and giving a shit and actual true focus on my client. That was a non-starter. So if you can bring those things in an area where you have expertise and you go directly to the clients and you directly contract with them instead of trying to work through somebody else getting you clients, that is the how you will make the kind of money that will give you the ability to build a life that you love. That's exactly what I've done. And I hope this gives you some insight into how you can do the same thing. I wish you luck. If you want to understand exactly how I sell, how I built and designed my business, here's a free book that you can read, and I strongly encourage you to read it. This is not a couple of pages. This is 45 pages, 15,000 words of really good material that explains exactly how I sell, exactly how I position my business, and has some resources and some templates that you can follow to do the same. Lots of people, hundreds of people have downloaded this book and told me that they love it. So, hey, it's here. You might as well grab it. Other than that, find me on LinkedIn, like I said, connect with me. I'm always happy to chat about especially about these types of topics. So never too far away. Again, wishing you luck. I believe in you. And if you want to build a life that's awesome, believe in yourself. You will do it.